is right there.
Mari o Bliwth 9. Yn un iawn?
Welcome everyone to our afternoon session, Embedding Digital Support. It was great to see that video there from Digital Communities Wales, showing some of the fantastic impact that they and their partners have had on people's lives during this pandemic. A big thank you again to Digital Communities Wales for their sponsorship of this conference, along with Clwyd Allen. And thank you to Cadwyn Housing Association, who are our sponsor for today, which is on the theme of learning from the response to COVID. I'm delighted today that we're hearing from a number of people during our Embedding Digital Support session. Who would have thought a year and a half ago that we'd be so used to using Zoom and Teams and other digital substitutes for delivering support across Wales? But here we are, and I think we've learnt an awful lot from this experience. While many of us are looking forward to seeing people face to face, and we know the value of face-to-face support cannot be replaced by any technology, we think that there's lots to learn from this experience, lots to learn from how technology has been used to engage with people in ways that they haven't engaged before, how some people have felt more comfortable using digital or phone access. So there's lots to think about and lots to build on. Got a fantastic panel today. We have Cadi from Digital Communities Wales. Cadi worked in the sector for Galadi and Caerlas before, so she has a really good understanding of the challenges facing the housing, homelessness and support sector, but she'll be speaking from her perspective in her new role at Digital Communities Wales. We'll also be hearing from Ashley Bale and Nick French from Innovate Trust, who support people with learning disabilities, and see how they've really embraced technology before the pandemic and during the pandemic to make a huge difference to people's lives. And last but not least, we'll hear from Nicola Fitzpatrick from Llamau, who've been supporting young people experiencing homelessness and women fleeing domestic abuse during this pandemic, using digital solutions to keep people safe and to make sure that people have the support that they need, as well as continuing to deliver in their education and training packages to many young people across Wales. So first of all, can I introduce Cadi, who's going to talk about the work of Digital Communities Wales and what we can learn from this experience.
Thank you very much for that welcome, Katie. It's great to be here. Gwyn, if you could share the presentation, please, that would be much appreciated. Fab. So afternoon all, Prynhawn da pawb. As Katie said, I currently work for Digital Community Wales, which is the Welsh Government's Pan-Wales Digital Inclusion Programme, focusing on digital confidence, health and wellbeing. Next slide. The Wales Co-op have been delivering Welsh Government digital inclusion programmes for the last 15 years, and this current programme has an increased focus on health and social care. Our aim is to support and inspire organisations to ensure digital inclusion, digital skills and confidence is embedded into delivery so that people can benefit from the internet positively and safely. Next slide. To touch on digital inclusion, it's ultimately about people and what digital technology can do for them to increase their quality of life. The pandemic has really highlighted both the issue of digital exclusion, a lack of access, skills and confidence, and the digital divide. With face-to-face contact all but stopping overnight, digital became default in many places, something everyone needed and no longer a nice to have. We've seen social distancing restrictions significantly increase reliance on online access. Digital inclusion has now been more crucial to ensuring individuals and communities can access information and services and connect with others. With an increasing move to digital, those who are not online or engaging effectively with the digital world are at risk of being left behind. This is leading to a digital divide between those who have access to tech and those who do not, giving rise to inequalities in access to opportunities, knowledge, services, and goods. It means some people are being left behind and more support is required to help people get online. It's safe to say that the team last year were exceptionally busy fielding requests for support from organisations in how to get their clients, members, tenants, etc. online. Next slide. The reality is people who could benefit most from being online are those most at risk from being unable to do so. On the next slide, the National Survey for Wales 1920 found that 10% of people in Wales do not use the internet. This is down from 23% in 2012-13, but falls far short of where Wales needs to be to become a digitally inclusive nation. What is even more concerning is that those who are the most vulnerable to COVID are also far more likely to not be internet users. The proportion of people who do not use the internet rises to 41% for those aged 75 and older, and 18% for those 50 and older. It's not only older people though. 18% of disabled people and 17% of people in social housing are also digitally excluded. That 17% in social housing is an estimated 60,000 residents, and an estimated 105,000 residents do not have all 5 basic digital skills to confidently use the internet. The 5 basic digital skills being managing information, communicating, transacting, so buying and selling online, problem solving, and creating. Next slide. So what about the barriers? There are many potential reasons that people are not able to get online, as you can see on the slide, but the 4 of the main barriers are cost, connectivity, skills, and motivation. These issues have been exacerbated by COVID. It has brought about a rise in the use of the term data poverty, where individuals and households are having to choose between dinner or data, between buying food, paying for gas or electric, or paying for broadband. It's no longer enough either to say someone is digitally included if they have a smartphone. We saw from the rollout of the NHS COVID app that it wasn't compatible with older smartphone models. None of us could argue that internet access has not become an essential utility. Our CEO at the Wales Cooperative Centre, Derek Walker, recently summed it up in an article in the Institute of Welsh Affairs, in that it would be unacceptable if 10% of the population did not have water or power, and it is no longer tolerable that so many people cannot access the internet. Access to the internet is a human right. Next slide. We know that digital skills, confidence, access, and connectivity can support many areas of our lives, from improving our health and well-being, reducing isolation or loneliness, managing our money, finding employment, being able to work, or participating in our communities. Digital, as I said, is no longer a nice to have, and COVID has seen a rise in housing and support providers reaching out to us to think and do differently. Next slide. So what have the DCW team been doing during the pandemic with housing and support providers? They've been supporting organisations to develop and embed digital inclusion into housing and support services, connecting organisations together to work in partnership. They've also been providing free training for staff and volunteers. Our training team have delivered over 400 training sessions to a wide range of organisations since COVID hit, from how to support someone online in a world of social distancing, digital storytelling, how to use smart speakers, how to use Zoom and Teams, the use of sensory apps, mindfulness apps, awareness of online safety and fake news, the list goes on. They've also been supporting organisations to develop digital volunteering projects or add a digital element to an existing volunteer project. And we've also been loaning digital equipment or signposting organisations to other loan services. Next slide. And when it comes to the access to digital devices, our provision of digital tech is through our short-term loan kit or longer-term Pathfinder avenues. But when COVID hit, the Welsh Government supported DCW in providing access to digital devices for key groups, which you can see on the screen. We've also seen the demand from housing association support providers for digital devices rise during COVID too. It's critical, however, that access to equipment comes with the right support and training as well. Those supported need to be at the heart of any digital projects or support provision. There needs to be a clear understanding of the wants and needs of individuals that you work with. Understand what interests them, what's important to them, and then show them how digital tech can help the most with that. Next slide. So as I said, we've seen a whole range of organisations and support providers across Wales take action in the last year to not only ensure their clients, members and residents can get online and use digital devices, but also get the most out of this. For example, we've loaned virtual reality headsets and tablets to a housing and support provider to use in a learning disability support home. The headsets were used for adults who were non-verbal and were used to help the adults with their communication and also to bring activities to them in a different format, as some of them felt they were trapped in what they saw as a very lonely world. We always find that supporting teams to use VR with their tenants and clients goes down a storm after a little hesitancy at the newness of it. Elsewhere, after training staff and learning tech, we've heard of tenants use Alexas to set up med prompts, reminders to feed their pets, find out about the weather, play music, all things which give them more independence. Likewise, we've supported tenancy support officers to upskill as digital champions to ensure they have the skills and confidence to support clients and residents digitally. There have been brilliant examples of support providers adapting quickly to keep in touch with their clients and ensure support continues via virtual means, and using that as a gateway to thinking about support differently. The stay-at-home regulations and self-isolation requirements have exposed a real risk to the health and well-being of everyone, but especially those already experiencing difficulties around loneliness and well-being. Ultimately, digital has allowed people to feel connected and engage in the world around them, as well as continuing to receive the support they want and need. Next slide, please. So Clwyd Allen in North Wales in particular have worked very closely with DCW, both before the pandemic, but also during. And Louise Blackwell, their community development officer, recently said to us in some feedback that the pandemic has really highlighted the importance of digital technology, enabling people to maintain connections and how important that is for well-being. That is really crucial. At the heart of the conversation around digital technology is people and how digital can benefit their lives. Next slide. So what learning can we take into the future? For me and for DCW, it's key that we understand the wants and needs of those being supported, that we work cooperatively and in partnership with others to pool ideas and resources, and that we inspire others to come on a digital journey as well. In-person contact and digital provision must work hand in hand to ensure individuals have access to the greatest amount of opportunities. Next slide. In my second week in post, which actually was only January, about 2 months into the role, I attended a session by Susie Lewis on sustainable digital transformation. She summed it up for me in that if we want to go fast, then go alone, but if we want to go further, we need to go together. Programs like DCW rely on other organisations playing their part in engaging underrepresented groups facing digital exclusion. We need to cooperatively rise to the challenge and aim to support every digitally excluded individual who wants to use technology. In summary, we know from our experience of delivering DCW that we need to solve digital exclusion by working together and by putting those with lived experience of being digitally excluded at the heart of what we do. And final slide. So that's it from me. Thank you all, diolch pawb. If you want to find out more about DCW and how we can support your organisation, your staff and clients, please do get in touch and we can have an initial discussion around how we can support yourselves. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much, Cadi. And it's great to have that offer of help, and I'm sure many organisations will want to touch base with Digital Communities Wales and see how they can utilise your expertise to help the people that they support. Just a reminder that please use the Q&A function on Hoover. We'll hopefully have 10 minutes for questions at the end of this session. So please, if you've got any burning questions or reflections, please put them in the Q&A and we'll endeavour to read those out and ask them to the panel. Up next, I'm really pleased that we're going to be hearing from Innovate Trust, who provide lots of support to people with learning disabilities. I'm delighted that we've got both Nick French and Ashley Bale here today, who are going to talk to you about some of Innovate Trust's work. And I'll hand over to you, Nick. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Katie. It's great to be here. Hi, and we're here to briefly talk about our Insight app, why we created it, how it's developed, and how we feel its future expansion will shape communication, directing and involving individuals with a learning disability and shaping future service provision. Originally, we developed Insight to expand individuals' direct involvement in keeping their own records, or as we referred to them, digital diaries. This was to increase individuals' involvement and include families, professionals, or other relevant parties, and with the consent of individuals, or where there was a best interest. We hope that this widening of involvement would increase the transparency of our service and could also provide greater opportunities for sharing, reassuring and communicating with an emphasis on expediency. After trialling Insight for more than a year with 8 individuals, 1 family, a case manager and an external organisation, we were ready to roll it out to everybody we supported by January of 2020, something we'd hoped to achieve by the end of that year. However, with the COVID crisis then on the horizon, we decided to speed things up considerably, and we achieved this shortly after the first lockdown with the 250 plus individuals we support directly. In parallel, we brought some of our activities from the community onto Insight and began to create others. By the summer of 2020, we were offering 30 live activities a week through Insight, such as music, dance, current affairs, social activities, well-being, and many other opportunities. This was 7 days a week and late into the evenings. Our partner organisations had risen from 1 to 10, and we had about 400 members from 8 counties. We've continued this expansion, and we currently have just over 1,000 members, 75 organisations from 30 counties across England, Scotland and Wales, and we're offering a combined total of more than 80 live activities a week, backed up by video content and challenges. We've been able to massively expand individuals' digital skills, and many individuals we've supported along the way are now leading or running sessions on their own. This increased confidence and involvement has currently led to more than 25% of the live activities on Insight now being peer-led, something that we feel we can further expand. We think that Insight has become a valuable community sharing and activity hub, a place to try new things, maintain friendships and make new ones. We've also made Insight as accessible as we can. Once you're logged in, everything is in one place and there are no links to copy or other passwords to remember. We hope that this short video that we're going to show now has managed to encapsulate some of what we've managed to achieve. Thank you.
We now have got over 80 live activities per week. A quarter of those are run by the peer-led. Some through Innovate Trust, some by skills and volunteering company. And as other organisations join and bring their activities to making this a great sharing hub, you can take part on our daily challenges. There are also pre-recorded activities, so if you don't fancy live activities and wanted to watch them at your own pace and time, you can. You can also post your ideas and suggestions. And now you can check our regular Insight News bulletins on Insight.
Welcome to Insight News. I'm your host, Richard Blackmore. Welcome to our peer-led news special. We'd like to introduce some people from the peer-led activity group. I'd like to introduce Tracy.
Hiya, my name's Tracy, and with my peer leading activities team, I run a dance session on the Monday night, which is at 7:10, and it finishes just between 8:30, 8:45.
I'd like to introduce David.
Hey there, Rich. I'm David. Quite recently, we've actually started the Breakfast Club, which is going quite popular between 9 and 10, Monday to Friday we're doing. So come along and find out what's happening for the day. In the evenings, we're bringing sessions to you, such as Kazoom, which is going to be every single Saturday. Kazoom's basically a party which you do anything you want on the night. This Saturday coming, we've got the Zoomathon, which is from 10 o'clock in the morning till late at night.
Thanks, Dave, for your feedback. We've got Fionn.
Hi, I'm Fionn, and I'm also involved with the peer-led activity team as well. And I do a quiz night and an activity night on a Thursday at 6 o'clock. And I also do a TikTok group, which is 4 till 5 on a Friday.
Thank you, Fionn. I'd like to introduce Nicole next.
Thank you, Richard. I'm the DJ JM for the activities.
Thank you, Nicole.
At the moment, I've been hosting a series of discos online, usually on a Sunday night, as part of the peer-led activities. Got a regular group that stay up quite late. We usually go on to about, we've gone on to 1 o'clock, maybe even 2 o'clock, particularly for our special events.
What sessions do you run?
The sessions I run on Insight is current affairs once every Friday with Naomi. Once every Tuesday, I do my own wrestling group, which is called The Wrestling with My Friends.
I do Welsh on the Monday.
Shwmai, Francesca Domec ydw I, a dwi'n dysgu Cymraeg dros y we. Hello, my name's Francesca Domec and I am the Welsh teacher. I'm a musician as well, so my classes are learning Welsh through song. I
do dance with Georgia.
My name's Georgia and I am the dance teacher for Innovate.
Can't touch this. Can't touch this.
I always check on the app to see what there's any activities if I'm interested to go on. It's a good experience for everybody to looking after their well-being, and it's a good relaxing exercise for everybody.
I enjoy the sign class because I like to learn how to sign.
We enjoyed electrical and banner.
Hello, my name is Tom from an organisation called Electric Umbrella. There it is. We are a charity that works with adults with learning disabilities. We are challenging perceptions of people with learning disabilities by enriching and empowering lives through music. We are all in this crazy storm together.
If you didn't have Insight, what would you be doing then?
Don't know, be bored all the time.
If it wasn't for you guys who invented the app, because otherwise there will be no more activities, because how are we going to keep ourselves busy?
He likes to do the Insight Monday to Friday.
I got the 2 boys.
When you get up, what's the first thing you ask for?
Turn this, I'm going to go turn it.
That's right, you check your tablet, don't you? To see what sessions are on.
I've been running activities during lockdown for people with learning disabilities, and we've advertised them through Insight. You can come and join our drag night when we have one next, and you will never look back. So yeah, come and join, guys.
And now it's Ashley. You there, Ashley?
Yeah, it's just to say that we'd like as many people as possible to come and join our app. Any organisations that provide support to adults with disability or advocacy groups or anyone who's interested. And we'd also like to reach out to the wider community as well. So any isolated members of the community or adults with a disability that are interested in participating and joining the Insight app. So we'd definitely be interested in that, and you'll find our contact details on the next slide. In terms of registering, it's as simple as downloading the app to your Android or iOS device, searching for Innovate Trust and downloading the Insight app and creating an account. And if you can make contact with us on the email addresses below, we'll then be able to confirm your access. And that would be it really in terms of joining. So we just want to reach out and make sure that as many people out there have got the opportunity to participate and take part in the activities on offer. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nick and Ashley. I've got a giant smile on my face from watching that video. It's absolutely fantastic. And I think it really shows what you can achieve through digital, the enjoyment that people were getting out of that, the variety of activities. It was just an absolute pleasure to watch, and I think you should be extremely proud of what you've achieved for so many people through the delivery of Insight. So thank you so much for sharing that. Our next speaker is Nicola Fitzpatrick from Llamau, who support young people experiencing or at risk of homelessness and people fleeing domestic abuse. Nicola is going to share Llamau's experience of using digital to continue delivering their support and training during the past year. Welcome, Nicola.
So I'm kind of wishing I had a fantastic video to share with you now after that one, but I don't. But I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about how, as a support provider, we've had to adapt to what is a new digital world. So just to tell you all sort of how we went about rolling out digital from one day being in work and then being sent home and asked to do what we can do remotely. I never thought I'd be out here saying that we were fortunate that we already had Office 365 installed, so that became a very quick win for us as a team. But what we had to look at was how we digitalize our services whilst making sure that those we support and all of our structures are safe. And so things like WhatsApp, which is a mechanism that we'd never really utilized as an organization, but actually how do we do that and how do we make sure that's safe for staff and for those that we support? So putting procedures in place to, and guidance on how we go about using that digital element of WhatsApp video messaging and WhatsApp text messaging, really, to make sure that we are doing what we can do safely. And then coming next really was just following that up with how do we make sure that people that we are supporting have access to IT, but not just, it's easy to get hold of a laptop, for example, but do they have access to the internet in their own homes? So we worked really hard with Welsh Government, with corporates, with our commissioners to look at how we mobilise some of that digital technology. And we were really fortunate then to identify who needed what in order to continue to feel engaged in the support. So within our education provision, it was identifying which learners had absolutely no access to technology within their own homes. So making sure that we were supplying them with dongles, supplying them with laptops, but in the interim and blending that really with having to send through activity packs and workbooks and making sure that communication back and forth with their tutor was there. And then in our support provision, and I oversee our domestic abuse services and our gender specific element of the work that Provide does, is looking at how isolated people already are when they access our services and how we remove them barriers. When we were in that first lockdown where nobody could go out, nobody could access their friends and family, we were working with a whole host of families that had come into a refuge, maybe from miles away, didn't know anybody, didn't know the local areas. So that feeling of isolation was exacerbated hugely. So every person in refuge, we put in provision for them, for example, loans of tablets. So the whole time that they stayed with us, they were able to make contact with their loved ones, do video calls to grandparents, and make sure that schoolwork was being completed whilst they were with us. So we had people signing agreements, like loan agreements for their tablets. And therefore, it wasn't just for the people that were with us on day one of lockdown. Them tablets have been utilised every time somebody new has had to access our refuge. What I will say is trying to mobilise us as a digital organisation, where traditionally we've been very, we're one-to-one support staff, we deliver group work face-to-face, we deliver our education provision in a classroom, alongside the competing demands. And I don't think you can underestimate the pressures onto the sector during them initial lockdown phases, and especially when we first started easing out of them. So we were trying to do all of this work whilst we were seeing referrals increase. And just for reference, our early intervention domestic abuse provision had 181% increase in referrals in that first 6 months from 1st of April to the end of September. So the staff team were having to mobilise, learn as they went, try and engage with new people through digital technology, and that's really, really hard. The building up a relationship with somebody can take a long time, and it's usually done in a really personal face-to-face level, and you get to see people's body language, you get to interpret maybe something's going on behind the scenes that you need to look at a little bit more. But when you're trying to do that remotely, it just takes that little bit longer, and we need to make sure that we acknowledge that. What worked really fantastically well with us was some flexibility that we had with our commissioners, and that open communication that we had, whether that was through the education sector, whether that was through the support sector, and making sure that we were all working together to do what we can do to enable people to remain engaged and keep them safe. And so looking at that sort of blended approach, and for our education and learning for life provision, for example, as soon as they were able to start meeting, we're meeting young people and women face to face in local community areas, just to touch base with them and see how they are. And we talk about digital access and digital learning and using digital resources to engage with each other. And I think referring back to your first speaker there really is a lot of people don't have the digital literacy skills to do that. So teaching people to become online. And for me, and in my world of work, it's about that isolation where the support worker that they see might be the only contact that they have in that week, in that. And so the visits that they were having from their support worker might be the most important thing that they had at that time. And we made a decision as an organisation that where we knew people were exceptionally vulnerable and exceptionally isolated, if we had to do doorstep visits, and that's absolutely what we continue doing, is, you know, we've taken all PPE precautions in place and making sure that people didn't feel just because they didn't have access to digital IT, that they weren't excluded from services. Moving forward, what we've been looking at is a choice-based approach, and it's something I think as a sector we are. What COVID has done for us is made us stop and pause about what we can and can't do. And I think there's a huge amount of learning of what we can do going forward. You know, just things like this. We're all in different parts of Wales, all attending the same event without having a huge travel barrier. So what that's meant for us as a sector and for us as an organisation is, the staff team would be delighted for me to be sharing this, having increased, you know, being able to take to support more people at any one time, because they're not traveling in between multiple appointments, and having that flex from and the discussions with the commissioners of our services to do that, to say, you know, we need to move away from that traditional approach to support of how it's always been with your face-to-face visits versus your travel time versus your admin time, to make the support what it needs to be in order to meet the needs of the person. And that includes choice-based. And if people want to engage through WhatsApp, through FaceTime, through any other sort of digital means, then that's something that we should be offering going forward. Also looking at our education provision, and I think, you know, my colleague Mark, who's the head of all of our education, will always say, you know, young people that have been excluded from education systems, from traditional learning environments, really benefit well from that face-to-face peer support in a small supported environment. And that is the ideal world of that, but it's now going to be wrapped around with some of that blended approach to learning for those that need it at that time. For me in domestic abuse services, we had to look at some of the wider picture, and this goes across the board, but it was one of our key focuses right at the start, is we talk about being digital and doing things from their own home. I'm in my house now, but nobody knows who's the other side of the screen to me. So is it a safe environment for me to engage online? Just because somebody says, yeah, it's fine, I'm absolutely fine, I'm safe. Do we know that that is the case? And therefore, would we be putting them more at risk by delivering sessions in this type of means when we actually don't know what that wider context is in their home, and people can be nodding along saying, yeah, absolutely, everything's fine. Also for children, and engaging like this for children has worked fantastically for the older children, young people that we work with. Teenagers have really embraced it. We've been delivering group works online to young people. We've been delivering sessions in schools and community groups. All of that has worked brilliantly, and it's something we will continue with. But for younger children, a 6-year-old doesn't want to engage like this for a long period of time. So the team have had to adapt very, very quickly, where they're sending them activity packs and resources out to help to do things online. So one of the team, for example, sent a young girl that he was working with braiding kits, and they used to link up on sessions like this, and they would do their support talking whilst learning a new skill. So they learned braiding was the first one because that was what she wanted, and then they were learning recorder tunes, but all of that was to open up some of that digital engagement and keep them engaged throughout the session. So it's just thinking a little bit outside the box on how we do that. But for us as an organisation moving forward, I think what we've been really clear on is people having a choice of how they want to engage. So if somebody wants to engage in group work of an evening time from their own home and it's safe for them to do so, then that's what we'll continue to provide. And if people want to come into a setting and have that session delivered in a setting, and that's absolutely what we'll provide as well. So it's making sure that we're having that range of provision and that groups. And when it comes to direct delivery of support, of education, of learning, it's that flex and blended mix of the two going forward. And that's what I feel we've learned as a lesson through COVID, that we can do it. Using technology day to day in the workplace in this degree has been a big push forward and a big learning curve for all of us as we've gone along. And we've all learned as we're in it, which has always been interesting. But actually it's given us some real wins and some real things to think about moving forward in how we actually deliver our services. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nicola. That was really interesting. And I think you're right, thinking about the different client groups is the critical thing, isn't it? Whether that be about an age issue around how people are willing to engage young children, teenagers, but also critically for your services and many other specialist women's services, that issue of safety when we're talking about domestic abuse and violence, and how difficult it is to assess that when someone's behind a screen. And you're right, we don't know what's going on in the next room or what's going on behind the screen. And I know that's been really, really tricky for many services as you seek to do the safeguarding stuff alongside the support. A reminder to everyone that you can submit questions to the Q&A. Really pleased that we're going to move to a Q&A session now with the whole panel. We've got a few questions that we've got in already, so we'll pose those to the whole panel. So if you could all come back and switch your videos on, that would be fantastic. Okay, the first question that we've got is, what's the biggest thing or the most important thing that you've learned from this experience over the past year with regards to digital? If you just want to put your hand up if you want to jump in. Go on then, Nick.
Well, I suppose from our point of view, I think what we've learned is that there's a lot of individuals that maybe wouldn't have been first on people's lists to be identified as being able to use digital and being able to take part. But what we've found is that it's not just individuals that already had skills. It's individuals that had maybe more profound impairments that we've been able to engage. I think Cadi said earlier about, you know, sensory stuff that we've engaged there, and getting other professionals used to the idea that they can create things like sensory stories and connect up with people so people can take part. We've also found that we've engaged with a lot of individuals that weren't previously engaging and that weren't taking part in activities. And what we would like to see is that people are moulding the future of some of the services that exist. And it isn't about fitting people into those services, it's about services changing themselves and adapting them to the needs of the individuals.
Thanks very much, Nick. Does anyone else want to go in? Nicola?
Yeah, I'm just considering about, I left mine really talking about delivering sessions online and things. And I think what we've really learned is how important some of that balance between the two is, especially around that peer support. And it's something that we have had to really work hard to replicate, if you like. So where we've been delivering group work, usually you would turn up at a group, you'd have a cup of tea, you get to know the people that you sat around in, and it becomes a really safe, peer supported environment in which people start sharing their experiences, and often very, very traumatic experiences. And in this environment where we're doing it digitally, you press a button in the side of your corner and you've suddenly gone, and that's it, your group session's over, if you like. So factoring in time pre and post session just for that debriefing, but also what we've really worked hard to put in place is a wraparound volunteer service that does check-ins. So even though people are accessing a group provision online that could be really impactful on them or could trigger something with them, that we're following that up quite quickly afterwards with a volunteer check-in service. That is just, how was that for you? Is there anything you want to talk through or anything? And that's really important. So it's that blend of the two elements, and that's something that we've really learned as we've gone along.
And I think from myself, you know, learning from the team since I've joined and my own experience, prior to joining is not to make any assumptions. So with young people, don't assume that they have those skills. They may come from a very low income family where actually they don't have access to technology, and don't assume that if you're giving somebody a device that they will know how to use it, that they'll know what you mean when you say click and button and download and app and virus and cookies and, you know, all these different words. That there is a different language out there. So the access to technology is really important, but with that comes that continued support, the training for staff as well. You know, I think when everybody suddenly moved to working from home overnight, that was quite a big impact for staff. You know, many of them will rely on peer support with their colleagues when they're in an office around you know, how to use their own device, and suddenly, you know, being in a setting which can feel in some ways quite isolated because you're potentially in your own home, you might be squished into a corner somewhere, and not having that access to colleagues like you would in an office. So yeah, don't make assumptions about skills, don't make assumption about age groups in terms of their understanding, and knowing that throughout all of that is that, yes, it's that safety, and it's also the skills and the support that need to come with it.
Absolutely, and it continues a theme that is and should be present in all services, which is about a person-centered approach. And you're right, Cadi, it's wrong to make assumptions about certain groups of people. But if we're having those person-centered conversations about someone's, you know, aspirations, skills, what they're most comfortable with, then that will help with some of the things that Nicola was talking about what does the future look like. And for some people, they've engaged more using digital than they may have done in the past, and that might be the right route for them, but for others would prefer going back to more of that face-to-face support. So it's all about the individual, isn't it, and understanding what they're looking for, what they need, and what their best format is for engagement. What have been the biggest challenges that you've overcome? If we think back to, you know, this time last year when all of a sudden lockdown was kind of coming down the line, everyone was kind of worrying about what might happen, and I guess you were all in your organisations thinking, you know, okay, how on earth are we going to deal with this, you know, when the government tells everyone to stay at home? So what have been the biggest challenges, and were they the ones that you expected at the start of the pandemic, or were there some unexpected challenges as you went along?
I can start on, just as a support provider, having the pressures of the two elements of that. So we did, you know, the message was stay at home. If you can stay at home, stay at home. But a huge amount of not just Cymru, but the sector's work is supported accommodation based. So that services had to continue and it had to be delivered. For me, all of that period of time was really about balancing people's well-being through that as well. And I think that was quite a challenge, just looking at, you've got staff going into projects feeling, you know, the key message is stay at home, and you've got people in the projects going, what is going on? And being able to be present as a management structure. So, you know, and for the wider team as well, the community-based teams being told to stay at home and work from home. And I think, Cadi, your message is absolutely critical. The amount of advice and guidance we give each other in the office of how to do things, that suddenly we were all just left, you know, to navigate how Zoom works or how Teams works. I've never been so excited when I sent people into a room and they came back again. You know, it's but kind of balancing all of them competing pressures was a real challenge, because it was having to be done as the time was happening, you know, as we were all learning and we were all getting on board with that. So making sure that our teams felt that they were completely supported all of the way through that journey, and their whole management structure hadn't disappeared to their houses whilst they were delivering that. And I think that balance for me was key.
I think I could very much echo exactly what Nicola said from my experience when I was in housing and homelessness. But I think what I want to touch on is it is that juggling. So for the DCW staff, a lot of our work is around inspiring people to go on a digital journey. And at the moment, our programme focuses specifically or particularly on health and social care staff, so working very closely with the NHS. Now, a pandemic hits and you're asking them to engage in new forms of technology and to do something exciting and innovative. They're literally saving lives at the moment. And likewise, the support providers in the housing and homelessness sector are facing, increasingly difficult experiences with people because they're cut off from family and friends. And I think trying to balance that, adapting to a totally new way of working and wanting to, try and do it in a holistic and positive way, but also balancing the fact that you are reacting because you are in a crisis. And I think trying to balance those two things has been really difficult. And I'd like to think that as we very cautiously, I'm not jinxing anything, eke towards a journey out of this, that we'll be able to reflect on what we've learned, but also go, okay, now we've got a bit more space and energy, how do we look at our services and how do we do things differently? Because I genuinely don't think it can go back to exactly how it was. I think there has to be, like, Nicola and Nick have both mentioned, a blended way going forward.
I suppose from our point of view, obviously we had some of the same issues that have already been mentioned, equipment issues, managing to get people online when you've never met them before, and you're trying to do it with them on the phone where they don't understand what they're doing, and you don't even necessarily understand what device they're using in some occasions. But I think probably one of the biggest challenges that we faced with the app itself and getting people on there is that we wanted to share, and there was a little bit of difficulty with that for some period of time. I think we've sort of got over that now, but I think obviously as a larger group of providers, if everybody is providing activities, they might be providing half a dozen or more. But if everybody can come together, then everyone's learning so much more from each other. Not just the activities, there's the interaction, and then there's getting organizations like, as we are at the moment, like CIW and others, where they can speak directly to supported individuals. They can run their own sessions, and so it's breaking down some of the barriers and trying to get past the stuff that stops information getting to individuals and stops them taking on that understanding. But I think that we've come a long way with that, and we hope a lot of other organisations will join us. But I think probably getting people to share was probably our biggest challenge.
Thanks, Nick. And I think everything that you've shared today, I hope that results in lots of other organisations engaging with the app, because I think, we've seen from the video the impact that it has. We've heard you talk about it today, and I think that's, an open invitation. We've already had a question asking if the video is available for sharing, and if that's okay with Nick and Ashley, we'll circulate that and put it on social media so that people can share the joy and the learning that has come from that experience.
Yeah, it is absolutely. It's completely available for sharing. Everybody's given their consent for it to be shared, and we will happily meet any organisations or individuals, screen share the app with them, and explain the whole process of joining and taking part to them. Just get in touch. Fantastic.
Thanks very much, Nick. We're coming towards the end of the session, so I wondered if we could just hear one final thought from each of you, really. I guess we've got an audience today predominantly from the homelessness, housing and support sector, who are supporting a wide range of different people across Wales. And from your experience of battling and engaging with digital over the past year, what would be your kind of final message, really, for how we take this forward collectively as a whole sector? I don't know who wants to go first.
I'm happy to go first. So I'll keep it short, and I'll say you don't have to do this alone. There are so many organizations out there interested in cross partnership working. When I was in the homelessness sector, the collaboration between third sector organizations and the local authority in Swansea in particular around the response to COVID was just exceptional. But organizations like Digital Community Wales do exist. We are there, we have that free access of support, and it's you're absolutely not alone in either tackling the barriers to getting people online or supporting people to navigate it in a safe way. You're not alone in doing that, and there is a huge swathe of resources out there. And even if it's just a small step that you're taking, you don't need to transform your entire organization and your strategy and everything that you're doing. If you just want to have a conversation, so many other organizations have been going through that. So yeah, get in touch.
Thanks very much, Cadi.
For me, it's really an overarching theme that seems to be coming up over and over again, and it's the word assumptions, and go back to what Cadi said around just not making assumptions about people and their digital skills. and just giving people the opportunity to get involved and work together and be part of something new. So yeah, I think it's just the one thing that's positive has come from the pandemic is the way that people are collaborating together. So it's just continuing that as things change and go on.
Definitely. Thanks, Ashley.
For me, I think moving forward, it really is reinforcing that message of a choice-based service, and not fitting into or not going back to the old traditional molds. I think we had such flexibility at the start of the pandemic, in absolute agreement with everybody that commissions our services in the sector, to say, do what you need to do. And I think that has really immobilized some of the support that we've been able to do. And I think rather than go, right, okay, we are, like Cadi said, quietly easing the other side, let's not revert back to that. Let's continue to push that message of choice-based provision and allow people to engage with us digitally, face-to-face, group, however they would like that going forward, but to offer that menu of choices.
Thanks, Nicola. And Nick, any final words?
No, I think everyone's covered it really. I suppose from a like blended approach, taking that forward, but what we're going to be doing is, when in person does become possible, we'll also be live streaming those activities so we can reach a greater audience, but with the same resources.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. That was a really fascinating session. I've certainly learned lots from you sharing your experiences, and I'm sure the rest of the audience have, and some really exciting opportunities to get involved there with Digital Communities Wales or with the Insight app. And as Nicola said, us as a sector thinking about what we want the future to look like and working collaboratively in order to get there. Thank you so much to all of our fantastic speakers. We're going to end this session now, but our next session starts in about 10 minutes. And that's on a really important issue, another important issue, no recourse to public funds, how we support people with no recourse to public funds after the pandemic. Absolutely critical that we tackle this so that some of the most vulnerable people facing the most challenges are able to have the access to housing and support that they need. So grab yourself a cup of tea and hopefully see everyone in 10 minutes. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr iawn to the panel. You've been fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.